Hello BookTube, it's Leah Cooper here, and today I'm bringing you a Top 5 Wednesday. This week's topic is second books that are better than the first. Filming in a different location because my office has turned into a fucking oven. And I think I almost gave myself heat stroke the other day, so I had to rearrange everything just to get like air circulating mildly better in this room so I don't die in it. Summer can be over at any point, any time. Let's talk about some books. So this week's topic, we're talking about trilogies or series that are better in the middle than the beginning or the end. I didn't really have 5 answers for this because I am bad at making lists. I think that's what I've come to discover. I'm just really bad at remembering the things that I want to put on the list. Like I always look at the top 5 Wednesday topics and think, oh yeah, I can totally do that. And then when I sit down to think of it, mine goes blank. No ideas. So number 5 should really be an honorable mention, but I couldn't think of a better number 5, so we're just putting it in. That is Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. And I know probably a bunch of you just went, what? Because I don't think this book is well liked. I didn't particularly like it either, but there's one reason why I say it's better than the first or the third, and that is it has the most Nikolai. If you've heard me talk about this trilogy, which I haven't done a whole lot, I talked about it, I did like a little mini review wrap-up of it in a previous month's wrap-up, my June wrap-up maybe. I'll link it above if you're interested. I thought the series was okay, but not great. I think Bardugo really, like, I don't know, developed as a writer, or maybe she stopped trying so hard to write, like, crappy YA fantasy between the original trilogy and her duology, because the duology is just, like, so much better. It's kind of mind-boggling. And one of the really telling things is that her characters in the original trilogy are, for the most part, either annoying or underdeveloped. Except, I would say, Nikolai. Nikolai is a genuinely good character. He's funny, he's interesting, and we get the most of him in book 2. I do like him in book 3, but there's huge chunks at the beginning, a huge chunk of the middle, and like most of the end where he's just not there, you know? And I remember reading the 3rd book and being so bored until he showed up, and then I was like, oh, okay, Nikolai's here. And it was like great for about 75 pages, and then he fucked off and disappeared again, and I was like, ugh. So I dragged through the rest of the book. I don't necessarily like Siege and Storm all that much. I think Alina and Mal are at their most peak obnoxious in Siege and Storm, but Nikolai is great and entertaining and really the only reason to read that trilogy. So that's why it's number 5. Coming in at number 4 is The Late Fantastic by Terry Pratchett. A couple reasons for this. First of all, I think it's pretty universally agreed upon that the first couple of Discworld books are not necessarily great, particularly the first Discworld novel is kind of lackluster. It's okay, but it's not stellar. It's not on the same level as the later Discworld novels. And I would go so far as to say that there is a significant and appreciable difference in kind of tone and humor level, the quality of the humor, I don't know, between books 1 and 2 in Discworld, even though those 2 books are actually very closely tied together plot-wise, and I'm pretty sure he wrote them probably all in one go or very close together because they tell together kind of one overarching complete story that is more closely connected than the rest of the books. The rest of them are very standalone. Like, yes, there are sub-series within the series, but, you know, you can still read them completely out of order and not be too confused. But these 2 books are definitely really tied together, but there's still a difference, like, and you can tell. Personally, I accidentally read The Late Fantastic before The Color of Magic, and I'm so glad I did, because I genuinely don't really like The Color of Magic all that much. I think The Late Fantastic is so much funnier and is so much more, like, engaging with the characters, and it's great, and it sucked me in. And I think if I had started with The Color of Magic, I probably wouldn't have continued with Discworld, or at least it might have taken me a while to get there. So that's why The Late Fantastic, and just the rest of the series in general, is better than the first book. Does the quality of the Discworld books go down in the last couple of books? I don't know. The last new release from Terry Pratchett that I read was The Monstrous Regiment, which came out in 2003. So I'm not really up to date on like his last couple of books in the series. I assume they're good. I liked Monstrous Regiment. Whatever. Coming in at number 3 is Prince's Gambit by C.S. Pacat. So this is the second book in the Captive Prince trilogy. Now, I have an entire review of this trilogy. I'll link it up above. I absolutely adore it, and I love all of the books in the trilogy, but if I had to pick one, and only one that I could reread, it would probably be Prince's Gambit. Like, it's tough, because I do really genuinely love King's Rising, and I would want to reread that one too. There's so much with the relationship development in Prince's Gambit that I love just so much, and the internalized conflict Damianos has, whether or not to reveal his identity to Laurent in book 2, it's so deliciously angsty, and like just him developing and learning about Laurent and seeing him as a different person is just so important to me. I just love it so much. Like, so many good character things happen in that book too. That's why it's number 3. So coming in at number 2 on this list is Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert. So I talk about the Dune books quite a lot. They were kind of my favorite science fiction series as a kid. They're on my list of things I absolutely just really need to reread to see if I still like them. But that being said, Dune Messiah has always been my favorite Dune book, which I think is really odd because it's bookended between like the classic eponymous Dune and Children of Dune. And when people talk about the Dune books, I really feel like those are the 2 books that they talk about. And with good reason, because you have the original classic, and Children of Dune, which just spins the entire series on its head a little bit. Just, it takes it to this whole extra level. But personally, I've always loved Dune Messiah the best. And it's hard to explain why, but I think it's because the biggest reason I love it is that Paul Atreides spends the entire book trying to subvert his own destiny. And he has this vision of what's going to happen, and because he's prescient, so he can see the future. He can see the way everything is going to turn out, and he sees this terrible future if he makes these decisions. But he wants to make those decisions, and he wants to avert that terrible future, and he's doing everything he possibly can to subvert that. And in some ways, he completely and utterly fails to do that. The terrible, heartbreaking consequences of his choices still occur. He still loses so much. He's still confronted with this destiny he doesn't want. Even up until the end, he still refuses to just be a slave to that destiny, and he still denies it. And it has one of my favorite quotes in literature. They say he has gone on a journey into a land where they walk with no footsteps. And I love it so much. And it sets up all this stuff where his own subverted destiny just becomes his son's problem later on. And it's just really interesting. And so I always really loved that book. Plus, we get a lot of really interesting kind of like world building stuff with the planet now that he runs Arrakis. And we get Alia before she's gotten real messed up. And I always really liked Alia as a character, and I thought she was really interesting. So it's just, there's a lot going on, and I just love that one. And coming in at number 1, second book that was better than the first. I mean, can I say that? No, not really. Again, this is one of those cases where I think the second and the first book are both just really good, but I personally like the second book more. And that is Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman. Don't get me wrong, I love The Golden Compass. I love The Golden Compass a lot. I like the whole trilogy. Though I will say I think the first and second books are much better than the third book. I genuinely enjoyed reading the second book more than the first book. To me as a reader, the first book is always kind of read more as like very traditional 90s fantasy novel. There are just certain ways that it's written that feel a little dense and a little dry. I do like it. I love Lyra as a character. But the second book, Subtle Knife, is so gripping. Like, I was sucked into that world so fast. From like chapter 1, I was so invested in everything that was going on. I was on the edge of my seat. I was so anxious at so many different points in time while reading that book for what was going to happen to Will and Lyra, and what was going to, how things were going to work out. And were they going to be okay? I was so deeply invested in it. The way he wrote it gripped me so hard. Another thing is I think Pullman's ability to write young children really shines in The Subtle Knife, because Will had the potential to be a kid who was too competent, too smart, too clever. But there's a certain sense of peril whenever he's confronted by dangerous situations where despite the fact that he is smart and clever and competent, you still fear for him, like, because he's only a child, and you never forget that he's older than Lyra, but he's still not that old. So there's a certain verisimilitude in the way he writes children in that book that it was so good. I loved it so much. So yeah, that's my list of second books that I thought were better than the beginning or the end, sort of. I don't know. I kind of cheated on some of them, but whatever. Let me know in the comments down below if you're a big fan of second books and what some of your favorite ones are. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.